The waiter poured wine as her daughter's smile sharpened across the table. Marion Wells, 73, widow and retired accountant, unfolded her napkin without a word. Her daughter, once the little girl who begged for bedtime stories, now raised a toast to family support. But when the bill arrived, the table went silent. By morning, the credit cards she thought she'd use were already closed, and when the honeymoon plans collapsed, the lesson she'd ignored was written in bold. I'm curious, where in the world are you joining us from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for all the latest updates. The email came in on a quiet Tuesday morning. Subject line, "My dream wedding," the kind of thing Denise usually skimmed over with a smile. But this one had 3 attachments, and a body text that simply read. Denise clicked the first attachment, a Pinterest board packed with white doves, champagne towers, $10,000 wedding dresses, and a cliffside venue nowhere near Charleston. The second was a spreadsheet labeled Preliminary Budget. It listed vendors, floral estimates, transportation services, and catering for 180 guests. The total, $96,000 and change. Highlighted in yellow, initial deposits needed this month. She stared at it for a full minute, letting the absurdity settle. Then she opened a reply window and typed one line, "Savannah, I'm happy to contribute modestly, but I won't be funding this." The phone rang that evening, just as Denise was closing the curtains in the living room.
Are you serious?
Savannah's voice crackled through the line, brittle with disbelief. "I am," Denise answered. Savannah didn't waste time on pleasantry. "You're ruining the most important day of my life." Denise walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and grabbed a bottle of water. "I'm offering to help, but I won't fund a 6-figure production." "They're contributing emotionally," Savannah said, like it was a term she'd just invented. Denise leaned against the counter. "You want me to empty savings for an event that lasts 6 hours?" Denise stiffened. "You mean I have boundaries? I mean you're punishing me for being happy." Savannah snapped. "You didn't have a dream wedding, and now I can't either." "Then, you don't know what my wedding was, and you clearly don't know me." She had daisies in her hair. There'd been no band, no photographer, no florals shipped from Holland. They had peach cobbler instead of a cake. It wasn't about the day. It was about the life they built after. Ran errands, listened to the quiet. She wasn't waiting, she was just still. Then on Thursday afternoon, a knock at the door. Inside was a folded card with gold trim. "Dinner this Friday. Just us. No pressure. La Fiamma, 7 p.m. Savannah. Denise read the note again. Just us. No mention of the call. No apology. No explanation. That place booked weeks in advance. Either Savannah made the reservation long before their fight, or she was trying to impress. Denise placed the envelope on her counter, her expression unreadable. This wasn't a peace offering, it was a performance, and she wasn't sure if she was being invited to dinner or being sold something she'd already said no to. She greeted me with a hug, too tight, too sweet, La Fiamma glowed like a jewel box when Denise pulled up to the curb, the Charleston twilight settling in around her like a curtain. A valet reached for her keys before she'd even shifted into park. She hesitated, this wasn't her kind of place, but handed them over. Inside, the air smelled like garlic confit and polished mahogany. Savannah stood near the host stand, glossy-haired, camera-ready, wearing a silk dress Denise was certain she couldn't afford. She cooed, wrapping Denise in a hug. It lingered just a second too long. Her perfume was expensive, floral, cloying, TC, too tight, too sweet, too fake. Denise stepped back and offered a small smile. "You look prepared. We're celebrating, aren't we?" The hostess led them to a corner booth by the window, already set with 2 wine glasses, half full. Denise raised an eyebrow. "We started without me." Savannah waved it off. "It's just the house rosé. Chris got a bonus last week. I figured why not." Denise didn't touch hers, generous of him. The menus arrived, but Savannah pushed hers aside without opening it. "I already pre-ordered. You always get salmon, right?" "Used to," Denise said, her voice even. Savannah winced, just barely. "I forgot. Sorry. I guess I'm just used to controlling the details." Denise offered, arching a brow. Savannah gave a soft laugh, like it was all part of the performance. No, just wanting things to go right. Ew. A pause stretched between them. Then Savannah leaned in, resting her elbows on the white linen tablecloth. I've been thinking about everything. The call, my reaction, your honesty, and I realized I do want you more involved. You've always been my rock, too wide, too clear. Denise watched her daughter with the practiced eyes of someone who'd once worked triage shifts, sorting out the real emergencies from the performances. I'm glad to hear that, Denise said carefully. Savannah launched into a story about baking cookies as a little girl, about the time Denise let her ruin a whole batch just to prove how baking soda wasn't optional. She laughed at her own retelling, even dabbed at her eye like the memory had overwhelmed her. But her stomach stayed flat, her pulse steady, because everything about this was curated, like the dimmed lighting, like the perfectly timed server who arrived just as the story ended with fresh bread and chilled butter. This place is beautiful, Denise said, glancing around. Savannah smiled. I wanted it to feel special. Ew. Chris's bonus must have been generous. Ew. A flicker passed through Savannah's expression, then reset. It was. The salmon arrived, beautifully plated, but Denise barely touched it. She let Savannah talk. Childhood wedding colors, first dance songs, even a joke about Chris's bad rhythm. But the warmth never reached her eyes. Denise dabbed her mouth with her napkin and leaned back. So, why are we really here? I told you. No, I mean the part you haven't said yet. Ew. Another beat. Then Savannah reached into her purse and pulled out a slim ivory folder, embossed with gold leaf on the corner. She slid it across the table slowly. Just look. No pressure. Denise placed her hand on the folder without opening it. It was heavy for paper, and the smile on Savannah's face said everything. Whatever was inside, it wasn't a gift. It was a transaction. It wasn't a dinner. It was a pitch deck. Denise flipped open the folder slowly, careful not to let her expression shift. Inside was a printed document, bound in soft blue cardstock. The first page was titled A Fertilized Wedding Proposal, a practical vision of love. Just breath, leaving her body in resignation. Savannah was watching her too closely. Before you say anything, she said quickly, I scaled everything down, cut the guest list, changed the venue, swapped the plated dinners for buffet stations. It's lean, realistic. Denise flipped the page. EO. 5D fish, down from $96,000. Still obscene. There's even a friends and family rate from the photographer. Savannah added. He's dating one of my bridesmaids. Denise's eyes stopped at a section labeled, Upfront Contributions. Request, Denise $24,000. Due no fee. She shut the folder. EO. You're calling this lean. Savannah leaned forward, lowering her voice like they were co-conspirators. I'll handle everything else. I'm asking for the deposit only. After that, Chris and I can manage. Why not ask Chris's family for the deposit? They're supporting us emotionally, she said. Too fast, too rehearsed. Denise studied her for a long moment. So their feelings count, and my money counts. EO. Savannah's smile didn't falter, but her knuckles whitened around her wine glass. Mom, come on. You've always said you want me to have the things you didn't. EO. I said I wanted you to have a life you built yourself, not one I subsidized for appearances. EO. Savannah's charm cracked. EO. I'm trying to meet you halfway. No, you're trying to get me to say yes to a smaller version of the same fantasy. Again. Well, she said, reaching for her wine, I hope you won't regret missing the biggest day of my life. Denise folded her napkin, placed it next to the untouched salmon, and met her daughter's eyes. Actually, I was thinking of doing something very different with that money. Savannah's brow creased. What does that mean? It means, Denise said quietly, I've stopped measuring love in line items. For a moment Savannah looked stunned, Genuinely stunned, like the script she'd rehearsed no longer applied. Denise reached for her purse and stood. You invited me to dinner. You pitched me a deal. Savannah opened her mouth, but Denise held up a hand. No pressure. She turned and walked toward the door, her heels clicking softly against the tile, past couples clinking glasses and servers reciting specials. Outside, under the flickering glow of the La Fiamma lanterns, Denise pulled out her phone. She opened her contacts, scrolled to Edmund, estate attorney, and tapped call. They wanted a check. I wrote something else entirely, my will. The law office sat on the second floor of a converted historic home, the kind with creaky wood floors and brass nameplates outside each door. Denise sat in the high-backed leather chair across from Edmund's desk, her hands folded calmly in her lap. I'd like to update my estate plan, she said, her voice measured. Edmund raised an eyebrow. Any specific changes? Yes, Denise replied. Remove Savannah as my primary heir. He blinked. You're sure? I'm clear, she said. Not cold, not angry, just steady. Edmund nodded and began typing. Would you like to designate a new beneficiary? Yeah, I'm setting up a scholarship fund, she said, for single mothers trying to finish nursing school. I want most of my assets funneled there. The rest, minimal disbursement. I'll provide details. He nodded again, but slower this time. You understand this could cause fallout. Denise smiled. Fallout already happened. This is cleanup. Back home, she printed a single-page letter and placed it in a sealed envelope. It wasn't angry, just honest, the kind of thing that takes years to write in your head and 5 minutes to put on paper when you finally stop hoping for an apology. She placed the letter in her safe, labeled it for Savannah, when she's ready. But she didn't mail it. She didn't want another performance. 3 days later, Denise liquidated a portion of her portfolio, sold off dormant stock options, and booked a 2-month solo road trip. No agenda, just maps, motels, and motion. Before leaving, she launched a blog, anonymously, Mothers Who Opted Out. Tagline, when love turns into leverage, some of us walk away. Her first post was titled, The Invoice They Never Send, but Always Expect. It wasn't bitter, it was honest. Real, sharp. At first, a trickle of views, then shares, then comments from strangers with the same script in different cities. Thank you for saying it. I thought I was the only one. They love the idea of you, not the work of knowing you. Denise posted from motel rooms and roadside diners, typing with tired fingers, letting the movement settle her heart. In Arkansas, she wrote about boundaries. In Arizona, about birthdays forgotten until money was needed. She never mentioned Savannah by name. She didn't have to. Midway through Nevada, she stopped for gas and scrolled through her inbox. One message caught her breath. It was from Diane, her older sister. They said Savannah told everyone you disowned her over a wedding check, that you cut her off for being too expensive. Is that true? Denise stared at the message. Yeah, her hands didn't shake. Yeah, but her heart? It thudded. Not from shock, from recognition. Savannah was rewriting the story. She hadn't gotten the money, so she claimed she'd lost the mother. Denise called Diane, and let it ring once, then twice. Then she hit end, and opened a fresh draft on her blog. Title, What They Say When You Stop Paying the Bill. They wanted the version of me who wrote checks and kept quiet. That woman's gone. The booth at Melody's Diner was tucked in the back, away from the clatter of plates and the hiss of overworked espresso machines. Denise slid into the seat just as her sister Diane arrived, wind-blown and skeptical, clutching a leather tote, an attention Denise hadn't seen on her face in years. I figured we needed to talk, Diane said without preamble. Denise nodded. Let's. She didn't waste time. She reached into her bag, pulled out a printed copy of the email from Savannah, complete with the Pinterest board link, the vendor spreadsheet, and the highlighted $96,000 estimate. Then the folder Savannah handed her at La Fiamma. Then the screenshot of the text about contributing emotionally. Diane read in silence. Her brow furrowed deeper with every page. She said you abandoned her. she said finally. Told people you just cut her off without explanation. I didn't want to believe it. But she was crying. Denise, genuinely upset. Denise folded her hands on the table. Being upset doesn't make her honest. Diane shook her head slowly, rereading the line, initial deposit requested, $24,000. This isn't a wedding proposal, Diane muttered. It's a business pitch. Denise raised an eyebrow, with a manipulative press strategy. Diane sighed. God. She spun this like you were being cruel. I was being clear, Denise replied. I won't bankroll entitlement. That doesn't make me cruel. It makes me sane. The server came by. They ordered coffee and a slice of peach pie to share, like they always had. For a few moments the noise of the diner filled the space between them. Then Diane said quietly, You know, it's funny. When Mom passed, you were the one who handled everything. The bill, the hospice, the funeral. Savannah told everyone you did it because you're just naturally generous. Denise smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Generosity becomes expected real fast when you don't say no. Diane looked down at her coffee. I believe you now, about all of it. Denise nodded. I didn't come here to convince you, just to show you. By Sunday, Savannah's version of events had started to unravel. No one called Savannah a liar, but a few aunts stopped liking her posts. A cousin backed out of her bridal brunch. One particularly nosy great-uncle wrote in a group chat, Guess the wedding's not as magical as she made it sound. Savannah didn't confront Denise directly, but her captions got pettier, her smiles tighter. One post read, People will rewrite your story when they're no longer the hero. Denise said nothing, but she uploaded a new entry to mothers who opted out, titled, Love is not alone. They say love is unconditional, but unconditional doesn't mean bottomless. It doesn't mean financing fantasy or tolerating tantrums disguised as tradition. We raised them with love. Some grew into adults who forgot that love is not the same as obedience, and giving is not the same as surrender. It spread like wildfire. The comment section flooded. Stories from Ohio, Texas, Maine. A mother who paid for her son's 5th rehab stay. A grandmother raising her grandkids while her daughter traveled for self-care. A woman who'd been asked to co-sign on a honeymoon villa. They weren't bitter. They were tired. And grateful that someone had said it first. Late that night, a new message appeared in Denise's blog inbox. No subject line, no greeting, just one question. Are you the one behind the mother's blog? My silence was broken by women who'd been there. And then a dozen. By the next morning, over 100. He traded it for something flashier and called me selfish when I refused to cover the difference. They were confessions from women taught to give until there was nothing left, and to smile through it. 3 days later, an email popped up with a professional signature. Olivia Myers, features editor, Carolina Current Magazine. Would you consider speaking with me off the record about the emotional cost of financial boundaries, particularly between parents and adult children? We can use a pseudonym. I'll protect your privacy. They met at a bookstore cafe in Mount Pleasant. Olivia was young, sharp-eyed, and respectful. She asked questions carefully. She didn't pry, she invited. About how silence gets mistaken for agreement, how guilt becomes currency, and how a mother's no often feels louder than any yes ever did. The author was listed only as MWO, short for Mothers Who Opted Out. Not online, not in private. But Denise noticed a shift. The bridesmaid dropped out. A bridal stylist canceled a post about working with her. A cousin who had posted dozens of wedding countdowns went silent. Then one evening, while Denise was trimming the rosemary by her back porch, her phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. Always loyal. The villain. The ungrateful parent. They want you present for the Instagram photos, but absent for the boundaries. They want your money, not your memory. She was brushing her teeth before bed when her phone lit up again. Texas post about me? Denise stared at the message for a long time. She didn't reply, she just turned off her phone and smiled, not out of spite, but freedom. She still believed it was about money, not respect, not truth. Denise didn't respond to the text. No explanation, no defense. She knew Savannah hadn't read the posts, not with curiosity, not with care. She'd skimmed for offense, not understanding, and so Denise let silence speak the truth her daughter refused to hear. The next morning, she opened Savannah's Instagram, out of pure instinct. A new story was up. White background, black serif font. Some people will rewrite history just to avoid accountability. Toxic parents, setting boundaries. The irony nearly made Denise laugh. She closed the app. By the end of the week, Denise was on the road again, a leg of the trip she hadn't planned, just followed. She hiked through Smoky Mountain trails, stayed at a bed and breakfast run by a woman who served herbal tea at dusk. She joined a weekend grief workshop in Asheville, more out of curiosity than need, but when she heard others share about silent estrangement, her chest ached in recognition. One woman talked about being cut off after refusing to co-sign a condo. Another sobbed over grandkids she hadn't met. They weren't angry, just bone-tired. Denise didn't speak during group, but later that night in her journal she wrote, "Love shouldn't be a toll booth. If you have to pay to enter, it's not home." On her way to Charleston, she stopped in Chapel Hill to visit old college friends, Anita and Teresa, women who once knew her before the word mom became her only title. They drank wine, laughed over ancient stories, and toasted to surviving themselves. "You look stronger," Teresa said, refilling her glass. "Like you finally stopped shrinking to fit people." Denise smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached her eyes. Duck at a roadside diner the next morning, she opened her blog inbox. 2 new messages, both anonymous. One from a woman in Wyoming, the other from Minnesota, both short, both desperate. "My daughter's using my credit like it's hers. I want to say no, but I'm scared she'll cut me off. I'm exhausted. Thank you for your words. They're saving me. I'm 64 and finally saying no." Denise read them 3 times. Then she opened her PayPal, selected Send anonymously, and transferred $500 to each. No explanation, just for courage. From someone who's been there. That night, in a dim motel room just outside Columbia, she scrolled Savannah's feed one last time. The photo hit like a cold slap. Savannah in white, holding a mimosa, bridesmaids grinning around her. A banner that said, "She said yes to the dress," in gold foil. And the caption, "Glad to be surrounded by real support." She just let the cursor blink, waiting, like her daughter always had. "She didn't invite me to her shower. I didn't ask to come." The porch light clicked on automatically as Denise unlocked her front door, suitcase wheels thudding softly against the step. The house smelled like lemon wood polish and stillness. 2 months untouched, exactly how she'd left it. She stood in the hallway for a moment, inhaling, letting the quiet land inside her like a final exhale. By Saturday she was back in rhythm, morning walks, grocery runs, tending the herb boxes she'd nearly forgotten. Her neighbor, Mrs. Godfrey, waved from across the lawn. "Denise, you're back," she called. "How was the trip?" Restful, Denise replied with a smile. "Savannah must be so excited. Wedding's coming up fast." "Huh?" Denise offered the softest shrug. "You know how grown children are. They plan their lives without much input." Mrs. Godfrey laughed, unaware of the weight behind the words. "Ain't that the truth?" Denise smiled, waved, and went back to her tomatoes. "Daca Palo Neuron Wednesday." The invitation arrived, a pale cream envelope, thick cardstock, gold-embossed letters, no return address. She opened it slowly, like unwrapping something fragile she already knew was broken. Inside, the formalities: Savannah Marie Campbell and Christopher James Morgan, request the honor of your presence. No handwritten note. No warmth. Just logistics. She flipped the card over. RSVP by August. Denise stared at it for a long moment, then, without bitterness, let out a soft laugh. She walked into her study, retrieved a small black frame from the closet, and slid the invitation inside. She placed it on her desk, right beside her laptop. A silent emblem, not of loss, of clarity. The next morning, she called Edmund, her estate attorney. "I'm ready to file the final update," she said. Understood, he replied. They walked through the revisions line by line. Denise's trust now listed 0 family beneficiary. Everything, the house, investments, retirement accounts, was routed to the scholarship fund. Final designation, no family heir at this time. It wasn't punishment, it was precision. That afternoon, Denise sat in her sunroom with a cup of mint tea, rereading a note from one of her scholarship applicants. A mother of 3, finishing night school after escaping an abusive marriage. Your help isn't just money. It's a message that someone believes I'm worth something. Denise folded the letter neatly and placed it in her journal. The knock came just after dusk. 3 soft taps. Hesitant, Denise opened the door, expecting a package or maybe another neighbor. Instead, it was Chris. Alone. No Savannah. No car idling in the driveway. Just him, standing with his hands in his pockets and something fragile in his eyes. "Hi," he said quietly. "Can we talk?" Denise stepped aside without a word, holding the door open, because whatever he was about to say wasn't part of Savannah's script. He said, "I didn't know she asked you for that kind of money. I would have said no too." Chris stepped into the living room like someone entering sacred ground, unsure where to stand, whether to speak, if he should sit. Denise gestured gently toward the couch. "Water? Tea?" He shook his head. "No thanks. I won't take much of your time," but his posture said otherwise. He had a weight to unload. He sat down, elbows on knees, staring at his hands like they might answer for him. "I didn't know," he began. "I didn't know she asked you for that kind of money." Denise lowered herself into the armchair across from him, watching carefully. She said nothing. Chris looked up. "She told me you'd offered to fund the wedding, then backed out." Said it blindsided her, made it sound like abandon. Denise's breath remained steady. "Would you like to see what really happened?" He hesitated, then nodded. She stood, went to the hallway drawer, and pulled out the manila folder Savannah had handed her at La Fiamma. She placed it on the coffee table, beside a printed copy of the email that started it all, the spreadsheet, the Pinterest board, the $96,000 dream. Chris leaned forward, reading silently. His face changed as he moved through each page, slowly, visibly. His fingers tightened around the folder. "She said this was mutual, that it was you who overpromised, that she scaled it down just for you." Denise's voice was quiet. "Savannah's version of events depends heavily on who she's trying to impress." Chris exhaled through his nose, pinching the bridge between his eyes. "I've been covering deposits from my bonus and my credit cards. She said her mom would make it right eventually. I thought this was just pre-wedding stress." Denise tilted her head slightly. "Chris, stress doesn't rewrite facts." He looked up and something cracked. Not loud, not dramatic, just tired, real. "She's been different for a while," he admitted. "Everything is about appearances. Instagram posts, vendors, matching robes for bridesmaids. It's like the image matters more than the marriage." There it was, the truth slipping through the cracks of his practiced smile. Denise leaned back slightly. Her tone wasn't bitter, it was maternal, grounded. "Start how you mean to go on. If this is already costing you clarity, it'll only get more expensive." Chris nodded slowly. "I don't want to fail her, or look like the guy who bailed." "You don't fail someone by refusing to fund their delusions," Denise said. "You protect yourself by listening when your gut starts whispering." He looked down at the folder one more time, then back at her. "I'm not sure I should marry her," he said. And this time he didn't whisper it. Denise didn't rush to fill it. She simply stood, walked to the front door, and opened it gently. Chris took the cue. As he stepped out, he paused on the threshold, eyes searching hers. "I'm sorry," he said. "You deserved better." Denise nodded once. "So do you." She closed the door behind him, rested her hand on the knob, then whispered to no one in particular, "I wouldn't. I didn't stop the wedding. I just stepped out of the way and let gravity do its job." She didn't tell anyone what he'd said in her living room. She didn't make predictions or whisper warnings or post any more truths that Savannah might weaponize. She simply stepped back. And gravity did what gravity always does. Savannah's usual polished feed, glowing selfies, wedding inspo, blessed and busy captions, began to shift. A pale pink background with cursive lettering read, "People love you until you stop performing." Another, "Days later, the worst betrayal is silence from those who claim to care." Denise scrolled past without reaction. Then came the mutuals, friends Savannah had grown up with, worked with, posed beside in dozens of filtered brunch photos. One by one, Denise noticed the names disappearing from comments. Then the likes. Then the followers. People weren't picking sides. They were quietly stepping away. No sign of Chris. Later that day, a neighbor, one of Savannah's former high school teachers, sent her a quick message on Facebook. Saw Chris moving boxes into the old Macmillan place. Alone. Denise stared at the message, then closed the app. No reply. No speculation. Just confirmation. Denise blinked at the audacity. Privacy had never once applied when Savannah needed help, or money, or a public performance. But now, when the cracks were too loud to ignore, privacy had become the new script. She didn't respond. That evening, Denise sat down with her laptop and opened her blog draft folder. A half-written post titled "Boundaries Aren't Betrayal" waited for her, but it no longer felt necessary. Instead, she clicked New Entry and typed slowly, choosing peace over performance. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is leave quietly. Not to punish, not to gloat, just to stop participating in the stories people write without your consent. I didn't sabotage the wedding. I just let reality arrive. She hit publish, closed the lid, and felt no need to check stats. The story was moving on without her. Savannah's voice came through the speaker, cracked, breathless, raw. No script, no performance, just 5 words through sobs. "I don't know what to do." And Denise had no idea if she was ready to answer it. She said, "I just wanted you to be proud of me." I said, "I wanted you to be kind to me." The text had been short. "Can we talk? Just us, please." Denise replied with a time and location, 4:30 p.m., Cypress Hollow Park. Public. Neutral. Quiet. When she arrived, Savannah was already there, sitting on a shaded bench, sunglasses on, legs crossed tightly, hands clasped like she was holding herself together. Denise approached slowly, cautious not out of fear but out of self-preservation. She had no interest in a scene, no appetite for drama, just truth. Savannah stood up when she saw her mother, then sat again, unsure of protocol now that the stage was gone. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. Denise sat without answering. She didn't need to say "you're welcome." They sat for a moment listening to the breeze, the rustle of Spanish moss overhead, the distant laugh of a child on a nearby swing set. Savannah began, exhaling like it cost something. "I just wanted you to be proud of me." Denise turned her head slowly. "I wanted you to be kind to me." Savannah's eyes dropped. "I know." Another silence. This one heavier. "I got carried away," she admitted. "The wedding, it wasn't even about Chris, not really. It was about proving something. That I could have the life you didn't. That I could be the person who got the big day, the attention, the praise. You already had my love," Denise said, quiet but firm. "But you wanted something shinier." Savannah's voice cracked. "I thought you were judging me. I was protecting myself." They sat side by side, but not quite together. Savannah wiped her cheek. "I told everyone you abandoned me, that you were cold, controlling. I spun it." Denise nodded once. Not in approval, in acknowledgement. "I didn't want to look like the daughter who begged." Savannah added, more to the air than to her mother, "I thought, if I made you the villain, I wouldn't have to feel the shame." "You mean accountability," Denise corrected. Savannah winced. "But you're here now," Denise added. "Which tells me you're finally ready to look at it." "I'm sorry." The words fell flat. Not because they weren't sincere, but because they weren't enough. Denise folded her hands in her lap. "Apologies matter, Savannah. They do." She paused. "But patterns matter more." "I don't want to lose you," Savannah whispered. Denise turned her face to the breeze. "I never wanted to lose myself. And for the first time in a long time, it was enough to begin. I wasn't punishing her, I was protecting myself." "No money," Denise said, setting her cup aside. "Not for weddings. Not for makeup calls. Not for whatever new emergency might come up. No manipulation," she finished. We speak plainly. No tears as weapons. No pretending warmth when it's a sales pitch. Denise let the silence sit between them, waiting to see if the agreement would be accepted or negotiated. Savannah didn't argue, studied the oak trees bending in the wind. In wind. That depends, she said eventually, on what kind of daughter you choose to be. Savannah's handwriting, still slightly rounded, like the girl who once wrote birthday cards in crayon. It didn't say "I'm sorry" in broad, vague strokes. It said, "I didn't ask for help. I demanded it, and called it love." It was the first time Denise felt something real press against the bruised edges, but a signal that she was open to more. Denise responded with careful warmth. Not ice, not fire, just boundaries. She focused on her life. Her garden bloomed. Her walking group expanded. She returned to the blog, slower, more reflective. The next afternoon, an email arrived from an address she didn't recognize. Subject: Mothers who opted out. Book proposal. Have you ever considered adapting the blog into a full-length book? Denise reread the email twice, then once more aloud. She leaned back in her chair, blinking at the screen. They called it radical, a mother saying no and meaning it. The advance wasn't enormous, but it was real. When Denise signed the contract for Mothers Who Opted Out, she sat for a long moment afterward, with the pen still in her hand, not triumphant, just steady, clear. The publisher wanted honesty, not sensationalism. They wanted her voice, calm, intelligent, human. They wanted the Denise who had said no and meant it, and who had lived through the backlash with dignity intact. She gave them everything, not just her own story, but curated letters from other mothers, all anonymous, all raw. There were teachers, nurses, postal workers, homemakers. One wrote, another, a hand on the shoulder of every woman who'd ever been called heartless for daring to have limits. When it launched, it didn't explode, it rippled. It moved like truth usually does, slowly. Then all at once, a podcast producer reached out. Denise hesitated. She'd never done audio, never told her story with her voice in the world, but the host promised anonymity, voice masking, no last names, no mentions of Savannah. She agreed. Sitting in a soundproof booth, one Tuesday afternoon, Denise spoke into a soft black mic, with headphones pressed to her ears. Her voice cracked only once, when she read a line from her blog. Love isn't the absence of boundaries. Sometimes love is the boundary. When the episode aired, it shot to 12 on the parenting charts in 2 days. Savannah never said a word. But Denise noticed a change. Did feel no more vague social posts. No thinly veiled jabs. Bio, just silence. And perhaps awareness. The second royalty check came in with a handwritten note from the editor. Your story isn't just inspiring, it's permission. Denise didn't buy anything for herself. She donated part of the check to fund 3 new scholarships for single mothers returning to college, all under the same name, the Opt-Out Grant. She sent each recipient a personal card. This isn't charity, it's recognition. You matter. Then, one Friday afternoon, Denise checked her mailbox and found a large white envelope, addressed in careful childlike letters. Inside was a folded sheet of construction paper, crayons, scribbles, a house with a garden, a sun, and a stick figure holding a smaller hand. At the top, written in green, Moss, Safe House. At the bottom, Love, Logan. Denise held the drawing like it was glass. She didn't know if Savannah had helped him write it. She didn't care. Her grandson had drawn her a home, and that, more than any book deal, felt like justice. She called to ask if she was still in the will. I told her, that depends on your legacy, not mine. It was nearly dusk when the phone rang. Denise recognized the number but waited a beat before answering. She let the sky outside her kitchen window go a little more golden first. Hi, Mom, Savannah said. Her voice was softer than usual, like it was walking barefoot over old glass. Denise kept her own voice neutral. Hi. A pause, long enough to feel the tension through the line. I've been thinking a lot, Savannah finally said. And I was wondering if I'm still included in your... She stopped herself. In your will. Not estate, not inheritance. She had at least dropped the language of entitlement. Denise turned toward the window. The birds were settling in the trees. Her plants hummed in the silence. "That depends on your legacy," she said calmly. "Not mine." Savannah didn't respond right away. Then, "Okay, I think I understand." But Denise could hear the crack behind the words. "I'm not trying to push," Savannah added. I wanted to know. Wills aren't leverage," Denise replied gently. "They're reflections of how we lived, of who showed up, of what mattered." There was breathing on the other end of the line, and then quietly for the first time without bitterness. "I don't want your money. I just don't want to be remembered by what I did wrong." Denise closed her eyes for a moment. "Then show me who you become," she said. "Not who you regret being." Savannah didn't argue. She just whispered, "Okay," and ended the call herself. Bug. Later that night, Denise pulled out the manila envelope marked personal instructions. She slipped in 2 letters. The first was addressed plainly, "Savannah, to be opened upon my death." Inside she wrote, "You were born with a full heart. I saw it before you had words. You gave me joy before you gave me challenge, and I kept giving, not because I was obligated, but because I believed in who you could become. These are the kindnesses I remember, Savannah, not the mistakes. But your future is yours to define." She listed them, one by one. The day Savannah brought her tea when Denise had the flu. The way she defended a classmate in 5th grade. A drawing Savannah made at age 7 titled, "Me and Mommy in Heaven." It was a ledger not of debts, but of grace. Bug. The second envelope was sealed tighter, thicker. On the outside it read, "Only open when you finally understand." It contained no instructions, only truth. And a chance. Bug. At the attorney's office the following week, Denise slid the updated will across the table with a signature that felt like quiet thunder. No ceremony, no anger. Just one final act of clarity. She didn't just revise the inheritance. She rewrote the emotional math of their entire history, and gave Savannah a path back that no money could buy. She asked, handing over the second envelope. The assistant looked down at the label. "For the day you finally understand." Denise smiled. It wasn't bitterness. It was hope, held at arm's length. "They invited me to dinner again. No folders, no speech, just soup, cornbread, and sincerity." Bug. The text came on a quiet Thursday evening. Just 6 words, "Sunday dinner, just us." Nothing formal, no pressure, no parentheses, no hidden meaning this time. Denise stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "Sure. What should I bring?" The reply came fast. "Cornbread if you want. Or nothing. Just you." Her hair was pulled back in a low braid, and the house smelled like roasted garlic and tomatoes. For the first time in a long time, the air didn't feel like strategy. "Hey Mom," Savannah said, soft and simple. "Come on in." The table was already set. 3 places, soup bowls, cloth napkins, a pie cooling near the window. No folder, no agenda, no performance. Just a woman and her mother, and the quiet possibility of repair. Denise asked about Savannah's new job. Nothing high profile, just steady work at a local nonprofit. Savannah asked about Denise's latest blog post, the one about setting boundaries without burning bridges. They both laughed when Logan dropped a carrot in his milk. Before dessert, Logan, sticky hands and all, climbed into Denise's lap and whispered, "I'm glad you came." He hugged her once. Then again, Denise held him close. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a lesson or a wallet or a warning. She felt like his safe place. Savannah didn't mention money, or the will, or the book. She didn't apologize again, but she didn't backslide either. Sometimes progress isn't loud. Sometimes it's soup, cornbread, and not asking for anything. She hugged Logan, gave Savannah a soft smile, said thanks for dinner. Savannah just nodded. "See you soon?" Denise didn't promise, but she didn't say no. Bug. Back home, the house greeted her with its usual stillness. She lit a single candle in the kitchen, and opened her laptop. The blog's dashboard blinked. New subscribers, quiet readers. A few heartfelt comments. She clicked new post and began to type, "Peace isn't bought, it's built. It starts in silence. It grows in restraint. It holds its shape in the absence of applause." She scheduled the post for Monday morning. Then she opened a fresh document and hovered her fingers over the keys. The cursor blinked. "Waiting," she titled it, "The Wedding I Walked Away From, and Why I Don't Regret It." Outside, the porch light flickered on. Inside she exhaled, not closure, but calm. She hadn't just opted out. She had chosen herself. And for the first time in a long time, she was invited in.